Apologies for the bit of a late start. I appreciate everybody's patience. We're going to go ahead and get started with a call to order. This is our call to order, and a roll call, please.
Vice President Bennett-Kill.
Here.
Member Chung.
Here.
Member Choke.
Here.
Member Kwolchuk.
Here.
Member Leto.
Here.
Member Nelson.
Here.
President Fay.
Here. And if we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
At this time, we will have our recognition of Black History Month.
February marks Black History Month, a time for reflection, learning, and celebration of the invaluable contributions of Black Americans to education, society, and culture. This month, District 57 reaffirms its commitment to fostering inclusive learning environments that honor diverse voices in history. Throughout February, District 57 will have opportunities District 57 students will have opportunities to participate in a variety of classroom activities that highlight the achievements, experiences, and contributions of Black Americans. Through lessons, projects, and discussions, students can explore history, culture, and the importance of inclusion. District 57 proudly recognizes Black History Month and celebrates the voices and contributions that continue to enrich our community and inspire future generations.
Thank you very much. At this time, we have our spotlight on the Lincoln Middle School 5-Star program. If we could hear from Principal Larson.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me back. I'm really excited to actually get to shine this spotlight on Lincoln. One of the big school improvement goals that we have for this year is we're really trying to elevate the student experience and really improve student culture overall at our school. We're trying to accomplish this through a variety of ways. One of those ways is we do grade level assemblies every quarter. The idea is to celebrate the end of a quarter, to recognize students through our Pride of the Pack Awards. The Pride of the Pack Awards are awards where teachers nominate essentially 30 students per quarter who model the attributes of the portrait of a graduate. So we're trying to tie all of that together as well. And then we also are bringing different student groups to perform. So for example, the first quarter, we had the dance team perform at our assembly. The last assembly, we had the jazz band perform, and our a cappella group will perform at our third quarter assembly. Just trying to bring all the kids together so they can see all the different things that they do, and we can celebrate each other's successes. And then the last thing we do is we have fun. We have lots of minute to win it games, just trying to build some school spirit and some school culture. We want students to feel proud to be at Lincoln. We want them to be excited to be there. And so these are just some of the things that we're doing. Now, the spotlight isn't on all of those things, but it's all kind of connected. The 5-Star system is our positive reward system for students. I want to thank Heather Salerno. She, helped put together just a really, really cool video that kind of helps capture it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a little shout out to Mr. Jonas, because he's been really instrumental in, pulling all of this together. So we can watch the video, and then just a couple other things I can add at the end. At Lincoln Middle School, we're building brighter futures by creating a positive, vibrant school culture through our new 5-Star initiative.
The biggest thing we're seeing right now through the 5-Star system is you're starting to see students very happy. You're starting to see them really engaged in their own behavior and changing their behavior. You're seeing teachers using it to their advantage to change the behavior of students in their own classrooms.
The 5-Star program rewards students for demonstrating Lincoln Middle School's Portrait of a Graduate attributes: empathy, collaboration, critical thinking, adaptability, and resilience, and for meeting the expectations of our classroom management system, CHAMPS, which works to create a productive learning environment. It's about recognizing and celebrating behaviors that make our school a better place for everyone.
A lot of times as a teacher, you're looking more at who's a troublemaker, who's, being disruptive, but the 5-star program has helped us look at who's doing the right thing and who's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then giving them like an immediate reward.
Students earn Lincoln Bucks for positive behaviors. Student members of the Principal Advisory Council are on hand during lunch periods to scan Lincoln Bucks into their accounts.
I think it's a very good program for people that can work towards things that you want.
I'm just trying to get some gift cards and talkies.
I got a dish shirt, got a Dunkin' Donuts gift card, and I got a bag of chips.
With their first points, students buy their class t-shirt, fostering school spirit and community. After that, they can save up for swag, snacks, and supplies from the 5-star store.
It really helps to give students a voice and allows for a lot more active participation.
We'll reinforce positive behaviors instead of correcting the negative, and it catches on. I give out a couple in the beginning and I say, I love how you're ready to go. And suddenly everybody gets ready to go.
The 5-star initiative is already improving school culture. While it's too early to measure the full impact, office referrals for poor behaviors are down. The program is helping both students and staff focus on the positive, to build relationships, and to strengthen Lincoln Middle School's spirit.
You're starting to see tardies, reduce. You're seeing behaviors reduce, but you're seeing an overall climate of happiness that is starting.
So I think it's been a nice way to connect with the kids and get them doing positive things.
They're trying to be more positive. They're trying to be on task. They're trying to support each other.
The buy-in's there and they're excited and engaged to come to class.
At Lincoln Middle School, the 5-star initiative isn't just a program. It's a promise to recognize greatness, to build connections, and to create a thriving school community. So one of the things that's really great is that this is a whole school thing. It's not just the students. You can see from the interviews from the teachers there's a lot of staff buy into this, and I really like some of the things that I like what all the teachers said. But I really like what Mrs. Milliken said about the proactive side of recognizing positive behavior as opposed to constantly reacting, to negative behavior. For perspective, as of last Friday, we've scanned in 23,400 Lincoln Bucks. So when you think about that, that means that is 23,400 individual recognitions across the entire building to tell students you're doing a good job, you're doing what's expected, you are following what we want you to do and what makes you a good student. We're really finding that students are motivated by it, they're excited about it. And so we actually brought something for you. Inside your bags is a T-shirt, and if for some reason it's the wrong size, that is an easy thing to correct. But in the video, I talked about how the first thing that students can purchase is a T-shirt. And each grade has a different color. So 6th grade is gray, 7th grade is red, 8th grade is black. And so we got you guys all the red T-shirts. So it says Lincoln Lions, it says Pride of the Pack. Some kids might think you're a 7th grader, but that's okay, right? That's okay. But we're really excited about what we're seeing at Lincoln since we've been going through this. Our official rollout was Halloween, and so we've been. So when I say 23,400, that's also since Halloween. That's not even since the beginning of the school year. So we're excited about what it's doing. We think that the kids are excited about it, and we're really excited to bring this to you. So thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah. I wonder if there's an option to trade in the T-shirt for Mr. Jonas's sweatshirt from the video, because that is pretty cool. I love that it's like a varsity look. It's a little vintage. It's nice.
Yeah, so... Sure.
I'm only joking. No, okay. I'm perfectly happy with my gift.
The sweatshirt is actually, so just kind of for perspective, when it's how much does something cost at the school store? So the T-shirt, we try to make it easy. That's 10. You just need 10 Lincoln Bucks for that. $225 though for the sweatshirt. It is the premier.
Yeah.
It's the premier item. Kids they're saving up for it, and we are starting to see kids walking around with it, wearing it. So it's been really fun to watch. It's also kind of keeping us on our toes because we got to also make sure that what we're putting in the store is something that they also want to work towards. And that's where the Principal Advisory Council has been really helpful because they've really been consulting on what is it the kids want. Because sometimes we have an idea of what we think they want, and sometimes we're right. We were actually just talking about some of the things that were at the last meeting, and the three of us didn't think of this, but it makes sense. Like Amazon gift cards was like a really high, highly desirable item. So we've got good partnerships with the PTO who are helping us support this. Ed Foundation's also helping us support it as well. So thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to chime in on? You're trying to get away from the microphone.
I was.
Go ahead.
This is great. It's awesome. It's great to hear. It's great that the kids are involved and they're putting their ideas forward of what they want to see in there and the proactiveness of it. I think this is a great job. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Vicki?
Just to echo what Eileen said, even a year ago, I think last spring at the PTO meetings when it was just an idea almost, and just to see almost every PTO meeting, there's some, report or update. And I remember Mr. Jonas, a couple meetings ago, you brought in the swag for us to admire. So it's been so amazing and fun to see it come alive. And I also want to say I love that it's building that culture of looking for the good, looking for the positive. It's so easy to just, oh, you didn't do this and you didn't do this. But now amongst students, staff, teachers, everyone's looking for the good and rewarding it and celebrating it. So, yeah, I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any feedback? I have just a question. I'm curious because if I remember correctly, there was previously like a Paw Points type of program.
Correct.
Are you finding that this is working more effectively, or how is it different from what was previously being implemented?
Yeah, so the way the Paw Points system worked before is kids could still earn like a ticket that would go into the office. There was a 6th grade bucket, a 7th grade bucket, an 8th grade bucket. And so names would get drawn like quarterly, and of those names that were drawn, those kids would receive an award. The thing that's different about this is the Lincoln Bucks are essentially like a currency. So it's no longer like, when you get that Lincoln Buck, you can actually do something with it. It's not left to chance on whether or not I get rewarded. I think sometimes kids get kind of disheartened because, I have, 50 Paw Points in the jar, Mr. Jonas has, 100 and mine gets drawn and his doesn't, and it starts to take away the, well, why am I trying so hard? And so now they can actually get what they want, and there's so many more options for them.
So capitalizing a little bit on that instant gratification, right? Trying to get the reward as soon as possible instead of leaving it up to chance. Well, I think that's great, and it seems like it's effective so far. I'll be excited to hear, as the year goes on. Right, I know you said this is just since October. It's not even the full school year, so really excited to hear what it looks like once we get to the end of the year.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on then to our 8th grade boys basketball recognition. If Coach Cross could come up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Cross, and I am the head coach for the 8th grade boys basketball team at Lincoln Middle School, where I also teach PE and health. It's an absolute honor to stand before you today and celebrate the incredible success of this team. The season was nothing short of extraordinary. We went undefeated in our regular conference season, battled through challenges, and emerged as champions, securing first place in our conference. From the very first game to the final buzzer, this team showed resilience, determination, and an unbreakable bond. We became the team that others didn't want to face but were striving to beat. And yet, game after game, our boys rose to the challenge, playing with heart, skill, and an undeniable passion for the game. It was a season filled with excitement, hard work, and unforgettable moments, to say the least. Not only did we dominate our regular conference season, but we also fought through the intense competition of the end of the season tournament. We battled all the way to a hard-earned 3rd place. It was a true testament to the grit and perseverance of this team. But success like this doesn't happen without the support of an entire community. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of District 57, its board members, our Lincoln administration and staff, and the families and community members who cheered us on every step of the way. Your encouragement and support made all the difference. And of course, most importantly, to the players. You made this season special. Your dedication, teamwork, and commitment to excellence were inspiring to watch. Congratulations, champs. You made us all very proud. I look forward to all your future accomplishments. Thank you. And then I'm just going to call you up one by one to give you your award. Jack. Jake. You got two of them. Joaquin. Michael. Adam.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here tonight, and we're so proud of all of the success that you all have had. You guys are a tough crowd to book. We tried to have you here earlier, and you had some tournament you had to be at, I guess. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a moment to take a picture with everyone at the back of the room, if that's all right. Okay, we now have the immense pleasure of having our newly selected student board members join us for their inaugural meeting, although I think we've already established we won't make you stay for the whole one this time. But we're very pleased to meet you all and excited to have the opportunity to work with you. Before we have introductions, I want to thank Jen and Dr. Gore for their hard work in selecting the four of you. I understand it was a tight field of candidates and lots of people who were interested in the position. So we're extremely grateful to have your interest and to have you all be dedicated to this work. And we want to congratulate you for being selected. Dr. Gore, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, so I'm going to have our student board members come on up, and we have just a short introduction. You can come up to the podium. And as President Fay said, this was enormously joyful for Member Choke and I to be part of this process from the moment that you submitted your applications to meeting you in person and listening to the ideas you have. You could feel just the energy and intention that you brought, and it was truly agonizing to be able to think about who wouldn't be an amazing fit for this role. So truly, though, know what an honor it is to be selected. And we already have some structures in place to make sure that the students that were not picked to be student board members will have been invited to serve on a superintendent council, so that not only I can continue to benefit from the ideas they have for the district, but also our student board members, I think, will find their peers on that team really helpful as well, because the work of being a leader is the work of working with others and listening as much as it is about bringing your own ideas. And I think so much of this experience will be meaningful not only to you but also to everyone around you. So with that, I am going to ask our first student board member, Zoe, to introduce herself.
Hello everyone. My name is Zoe Schmidt, and I'm currently an 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School. In the past, I've attended both Lions Park and Westbrook since kindergarten, and my goal in serving as a student board member is to add my voice to this collaborative educational community in District 57.
Thank you. You can stay right up here, okay?
Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Getmanchuk. I'm in 7th grade and I go to Lincoln. My past schools in District 57 were Westbrook and Fairview. What I'm most looking forward to as a student board member is having a say in what happens in our school community and giving people who aren't on the board a chance to voice their opinions and thoughts. I'm excited to bring my ideas to the table and have an impact on future generations of students. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Saji, and I'm truly honored to be joining you on the student board. I want to thank you all for trusting me with this responsibility, and I'm so excited to be a part of a team that works to make the district a better place for all of us. I'm in 7th grade, and I went to Lions Park and Lincoln Middle School. Outside of school, I love playing basketball and the guitar. One of my main goals as a student board member is to create a more inclusive and diversified space here at school. I believe everybody should feel valued, respected, and represented. Thank you again for this incredible opportunity, and I look forward to getting started.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Marsh. I'm currently an 8th grader at Lincoln and have attended Fairview and Westbrook. As a school board member, I am really looking forward to representing my peers in here with all of you and to creating a really meaningful impact throughout our community. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to creating change within our district that will help everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can tell just from their incredible introductions, these are 4 amazing human beings, and we are just truly honored that you're here tonight. I know I speak for the board and just the excitement we all feel to know that you'll be sharing these meetings with us and also the work that we'll be doing together outside the meeting. Do you have any questions or anything that you wanted to ask at this time? Or the process?
Did anybody have anything that they wanted to say? Jen, go ahead.
Yeah. I had the privilege of interviewing all 19 students on the amazing day that Dr. Gore and I had together with these students, and I'm so grateful, one, that we were able to make this happen. It's been a long time coming, and 2, that you guys are here. So thank you so much for being willing to sit at this table with us, to help make the community a better place, to continue to have that student voice at the table. So thank you.
Anybody else? Chris, go ahead.
Not a question, but just I echo what Jen said. Congratulations to all of you. I know this has been, I think, 2 years in the making, maybe, or something like that. But, obviously, giving students a greater voice is part of our strategic plan. And I love that, this is one embodiment of that. And really, I also applaud you all for having the courage to put yourself out here to do this. I mean, this takes time. I'm sure it took time to prepare. You're all busy people, and it's not easy having to get grilled by Jen and Dr. Gore. I'm sure. So really, I couldn't be happier that you all are joining us and that you're willing to serve in this manner, and really can't wait to hear your ideas. So welcome.
Vicki?
Nothing new to add, just echoing this, how proud we all are of just this moment of hearing you speak, the courage that it takes, the dedication, your commitment to even wanting to be on this student board. So yes, exactly. We're so excited to hear more of your ideas. And just the fact that you stepped up to represent the other students in our district is really commendable. So thank you all so much.
Anybody else? Well, in addition to thanking all of you for volunteering for this opportunity, understanding the work that it will involve, I also want to give an acknowledgement to the parents of these children. You're committing to something too by having them participate, and so I want to recognize your dedication to bringing them to the meetings and supporting them as they're doing the work of being a student board member. I'm sure Dr. Gore has talked to all of you already that obviously this is a new endeavor that we're undertaking, and so you all are experimenting with us. You know, we have some ideas about how this process could go, but you guys are the trailblazers, and you're going to help us shape what this role, this position could be like for future students that will sit in your seats. So no pressure, right? No big deal. But I do want to take a moment to thank the parents for, making the space in these students' lives to have this opportunity. You guys are going to be accountable for making sure the homework gets done and making sure that, they get to these meetings on time and everything gets balanced out. So thank you so much for your support of these students. And at this time, thank you. We'll go ahead and move to the back of the room for a photo. Well, as I mentioned, you all are not required to stay, although you're certainly welcome. I'm sure you have lots of other things to be doing with your evening. We do have an opportunity at this time for community comments. The District 57 Board of Education welcomes community participation. In an effort to both listen to our stakeholders and keep the meeting moving, I want to remind everyone of our public participation guidelines and procedures, which are available in Board Policy 2:230. Individuals wishing to address the board can do so during the community comments portion of the agenda. Individuals should provide their name and limit their comments to 3 minutes. Please remember, this is not a dialogue between you and the board. The board is in listening mode during this time. Individuals wishing to contact the Board of Education are welcome to do so via the D57 website under the Board of Education tab. Individuals should behave with respect and civility toward others and abide by Board Policy 8:30, visitors to and conduct on school property. At this time, are there any community comments? Seeing none, we will move on. That brings us to our staff and superintendent's reports, beginning with our superintendent goals update.
Okay, thank you so much. In your board packet, you received the February update for my superintendent goals for this year. I always want to point out that this work, though, ultimately is what you use to evaluate and keep me accountable to the work I am lucky to do. It is truly reflective of the work of an amazing team and an amazing district. And that includes, obviously, our students, our staff, our families, our administration. This is a massive body of work. And each time that, I provide these kind of quarterly updates, there's always feelings of great pride about what has been accomplished since our last update. And truthfully, there's always a feeling of what more we have to do, and an energy around this work is just ongoing. So it's a moment in time, but reflective of hopefully visible progress in a direction that we're going, outlined in our strategic plan. So I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions that you have about specific areas, and appreciate the opportunity to do this work.
Any questions for Dr. Gore? Vicki, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I know Member Choke asked the best questions, so I thought she could kick us off. But yes, I have a comment and a question. The first one is goal 2A. Let me just find it, sorry. Yeah, it was attract, develop, and retain high quality and diverse and innovative staff. And so one of the bullet points really stood out to me, and it's when you shared, Dr. Gore, about a District 57 teacher kind of relating her extremely positive experiences having a District 214 student in the classroom. And then in turn, the District 214 student also was so positive about her experience. And I think that's amazing. And just wondering, and we might have talked about this in the past, but how is that pipeline between like 214 and what are you seeing? And,
We're encouraged by the pipeline that exists, but we also do see areas to keep strengthening it. So we are looking at a relationship approach as well as to like a structural approach of obviously working with the 214 admin and people that are really involved in this work. But we've also found great success in the relationships that we maintain with our graduates to keep kind of following up with them, encouraging them when they are reconnecting or staying updated in their lives as high school students, trying to really nurture the possibility of being educators. And really, I think in education and so many fields, you see certain qualities in people that would make them, I think, very, not only amazing educators, but I think ultimately you want to go into a career where you feel lit up from within doing the work. That's like the dream we all have for anyone in the world, that in the work you choose. And educators, for us, that's when we're around students and we're teaching things and we're seeing the light inside them come alive. So when we see that in our current students, we try to nurture that. When we see that in our former students, we try to nurture that. What that looks like is heavy recruitment and really kind of saying, we got to get you in. Like, come in, we start soft, we say, when's your schedule? Which teacher did you love to be with? Let's set it up. We follow up. Then we always try to work with 214 and say, hey, guess what? You get some credential hours for this work. We try to clear barriers because the more they can get into these classrooms with educators who have chosen this field, then the magic happens because they're seeing the influence of being in a classroom with an educator that wants to be there, and they're thinking, I want that. That's where I think a lot of people who have gone into this field, it's through being in that energy, and they can't always name it. So I think there definitely are things that we're trying to measure and quantify and keep expanding. We already have some ideas in place for how we're also recognizing the hosts of these aspiring teachers within our within our staff who are opening up their classroom, saying, of course, of course I will bring a student who is interested in this work. And that's a credit to our staff, because if they took an approach of how much more work would that be and how would I organize this and what if it's not a good fit, that is going to shut down quickly, the experience. But that's not been the experience of the District 57 staff. They say, of course, bring them in. And I think that's the joy of this work, is just making sure that we're setting up the interactions and the possibilities for people to find out this could be a life of meaningful work, and then how do we keep following up with them. And often that is me writing pseudo contracts on pieces of paper saying, well, looks like you signed. I'm watching you, and when you graduate, we will be sending a car and picking you up and driving you back to District 57. So jokes aside, I do believe that there is there is a need to stay involved with people as they, graduate and move on, because much of our community is built on people wanting to come back home, wanting to raise their families and work within this community they love so much. So making sure our students feel that we very much want them to come back and would love for them to be in 57. So, but in terms of numbers, we're definitely trying to be more, articulating and measuring and just trying to really track what's working and what isn't. But I certainly, Karen and Kristen have been leaders in this, so if there's anything I've left out that you wanted to add, please jump in.
Thank you. And I had one other question, and it was, let's see, 3A.
I think page 11. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 3A, expand collaboration with District 214 and SSCO in the sender schools. And it was, so I know we're doing some really great work in terms of collaborating with 214 and the center schools around math. That's just the math curriculum and what's happening there. And that's incredible. It's something that the board, administration, we've been wanting for a long time. And obviously it makes sense to start with one. We don't want to just go crazy and do all the subjects. And I don't know if there's any talk even this early to think, hey, in future years, let's move next to this subject, or let's collaborate on this area. Is there any of that conversations happening?
I have extreme confidence in that direction because of the success both of the math endeavor, but also because of the relationships with our colleagues in 214 and our sender districts. I can only speak of the experiences that I've been a part of, but I am very inspired by the level of collaboration and interconnectedness between not only 214 and 57, but also 57 and 23 and 59 and 25 and all of our neighboring districts. It truly is reflective of a lot of mutual respect and also aspirations that we have to deliver the very best and be a destination area to, be the best in the world, not just Illinois. So I think that I will continue to acknowledge that tone is set by 214 because they have the most, I'd say, power and influence to widen who's at the table, and they have leveraged their table to be more inclusive than I think we've ever experienced. But I would also credit it to the quality of the elementary districts being, following through and delivering on what we know we can deliver so that our students have the best outcomes when they are in high school and beyond high school. So I mentioned that we have available to us now the grade 9 data that we've been so eagerly anticipating. Now we're at the very exciting point of starting to tinker with it. Dr. Vonderhaar has a meeting, I believe, tomorrow with 214 and her job alikes in the neighboring districts. What we are doing now is refining the reports so that we can provide now for the board the data that we have available to us and start asking questions about what we are seeing, how we can keep getting better. But I think we can't define better until we really have clarity around how are our kids doing. And I know I'm looking at our Lincoln team too, and a lot of that even comes down to the articulation and collaboration they have with Prospect and how those relationships. I mean, it really comes down to the relationships, because you can have all of the data, you can have all of the systems, you can have all the emails, but if you don't have the relationships where people trust each other to pick up the phone and say, be honest about, what needs to get better or what can we expect of each other, I think there's going to be just a lot of kind of spinning your wheels. So I do think we have full expectation that this will just continue to be established for years to come.
Yeah.
So, and we know the 214 board will continue to support that work. We know this.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Gore. And you kind of answered my third question, which was about, just the dashboard data and things. And I think you shared this in a previous meeting where 214 was very clear in saying what they don't want is for the sender districts to feel like, oh, I'm not measuring up, and oh no, now I have to do X, Y, Z. It's the opposite. It really is collaborative and supportive, and so I appreciated that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, I know you had questions too. Did you want to go ahead? Does anybody else want to go first? Okay, I'll go. I actually don't have that many, so you can all be excited for that. In goal area 7, I have 2 different questions. One, there's the results from the staff survey, and I saw that much of it was positive in there, but there were a couple of concerning issues just around how they were feeling within the schools. And I was just curious on some of the action plans that are by schools, in order to better understand the results and think about next steps. I know we do stay interviews, and I know there's some other things that are happening in that, but I think I'm just curious what some of those more specific plans are.
We are really encouraged to have this baseline of data from our staff survey. The phase that we are at right now is that we are actively disseminating this information, and we're trying to do so in a very strategic way. So that information was first received by the committee of MPEA, MPESPA, and admin team who kind of developed it. Then it went to principals to then share with their building leadership teams and their union leadership within their schools. And now we're in the phase of delivering that to staffs at large, but with the clear message that simply to give some space for understanding themes, asking questions, being curious, and not falling into a trap of saying, this is clearly the problem and let's come up with a solution on the spot, or here's the solution that's been identified, to try to really have the wisdom and restraint to say, let's now decide who do we have to have continued conversations with. Because this data suggests there might be a little smoke, so let's find out where the fires are. Let's find out, and I think maintaining a commitment to trust, because people were honest in these anonymous surveys, and if we're going to maintain the trust that people will be willing to elaborate on how some of the answers were answered, we're going to try to preserve, safe spaces for people to continue to be honest. And I commend our principals, I commend my entire administrative team who have absolutely embraced a philosophy of checking any egos at the door and not making this data about them, but saying, if our staff are saying this, we all are going to improve things for our kids and for our staff. So next month, I would like to take time within the board meeting to, provide sort of a an overview of the data that we received, and I think even within a month's time, I'll have more articulation around some of the action steps that have been defined by each school. But the short answer is that we will see specific ties both within our school improvement plans that are developed in the spring, as well as our strategic plan goals for year 3 next year. And because the plan for this will be to measure at least once a year, we expect to be accountable to improvement within areas that have been established. What was nice about working with a third party is that they provided for us valuable comparison data around, similar districts to ours, as well as, school comparison to similar schools. And I think that was appealing to us because it gave us a little bit of context to say, even where there were some issues, it's interesting to be able to say, but comparatively, we're still higher than the average response. Or this this was really high for us, but it was lower than most responses for, staff who serve similar schools and districts to ours. So that's where I think we're really trying to be in depth in the way that we're first carefully identifying problems before we leap into, solving them.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Were there any qualitative responses that came back?
Yes. So we qualitative responses were available after each section within the survey, and the comments are available to administrators and the union leadership teams who developed the survey, and then staff at large received summarized versions of the qualitative responses by theme, by their school's responses, as well as district at large's.
Okay.
So
that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think having done a lot of staff and student experience work, data work, obviously you guys are on a good path. And I think just thinking through what do focus groups look like, and what do empathy interviews look like, and what do those things look like that really allow you to dig into, how was this question perceived is one of the most important pieces to do with that data.
And next month I can talk more about this, but it's also been really nice to be able to say, even within a school community, you can really disaggregate by employee group. And so it's been interesting by the way that different employee groups within a school staff can have a different feeling about a topic.
Yeah.
And that is always really useful, I think, to our administration and our leadership teams to be able to say that's a great place to start, where you see a clear dip within one, group of staff who have the same students we're working with, who you think, work in the same place, but the experience that they're having can be wildly different. And so how do we make sure we're listening to, their experiences so we're understanding?
Great. Thank you for that. I look forward to the presentation next month, too, to kind of dig more into it. As Josh mentioned, that was a question I had, too. He was talking about inclusion, right, and this idea of how important inclusion is in the school. And I saw in Goal Area 7 around kind of this building cultural awareness and multilingual supports that were happening in that PD section. I think it's on page 10. But all the professional development that was happening. Where is that, I guess, where is that headed? Do we have more lined up for continued PDs in those areas, really thinking about that internal work and then the work that happens with students?
I don't think there will ever not be a need for that work, given the complex needs of the students we serve. And actually, one of the questions on our staff survey speaks to staff articulating how they feel prepared to respond to the diverse needs of the students they serve. And that's going to be a very important piece of data for us to evaluate and stay accountable to, because that was an area that stands out as something we can keep getting better at. And because every child is unique, as well as needs of children, continue to be intensified in many cases, we will never not need to keep leveling up our skills in order to make sure that we're meeting kids and families where they're at. So yes, there will be embedded and continuous work on that. And I know Dr. Van der Haar and her department is very interested in trying to keep making sure the menu of experiences we have are both varied, but also that there's a baseline for all staff to have, so that these aren't just kind of novel and sort of random, but that we have sort of a very deliberate, experience that we want all District 57 educators to have, regardless of their role when it comes to being equipped.
No, that's super helpful, because I think we know that one-off PDs don't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to keep revisiting, you have to keep coming back to it, you have to continue to have those conversations. And so, I think this is somewhere where we continue to grow, and I appreciate, the call out to, like, this work is never done. And you do have to continue to revisit, like, how are we working with new groups of students that are coming in, and potentially the students that are, and the students that are still here as they continue to grow through the district. So thank you for that. In goal area 9, you talked about Parent Square and that usage is going up in a lot of ways. I have seen just in recent days, I talked to a couple of parents that are saying like they don't necessarily know how to get it. And so I was just curious on with the continued training for how to continue to use Parent Square and making sure that everybody does know how, especially if they're new to the district or if they come in or just haven't downloaded the app yet.
Yes, we, being our first year, we're very encouraged by some of the initial, indicators that suggest this was a worthwhile investment and successful by many accounts of a first year. And we also are aware that there are some places that we need to keep addressing, both in the usage of the tool and then also in just communication in general, because the tool is just a vehicle, but it's not the only vehicle. So we do plan on surveying stakeholders, our families, and our staff early this spring, so that we can really refine our year 2 response to where they need additional training, retraining, how to minimize any aggravation this tool is causing, because that's the exact opposite of why we invested in it. But we all know sometimes these wonderful technologies can inadvertently create aggravations that we didn't have before. We know this. So just also recognizing that communication is one of those complexities of each of us have different sort of definitions of what our ideal version of communication is, both in frequency and style and format and all that. So just trying to be as flexible to the fact that we're serving diverse expectations in people. So how are we getting closer to what different people need and want? So we're going to start with the survey. We've definitely had opportunities to engage in some anecdotal and feedback that we've received through different channels. But even our front office teams met recently, and it was great to hear how those unique users' needs vary and how they need additional training and opportunities to keep making it better.
And I think the positive is that you'll have a lot more experts next year, right?
Yeah.
It was brand new to everyone this year, and so you are always going through that learning curve.
Yeah.
Teachers will know how to say to parents, this is how you use it at open house, which probably was not.
I learned many lessons this year. And some were very wonderful and others were very hard.
Yes.
But sometimes those hard lessons of a new tool are the ones that stick with you the longest, like what to enable and what not to. These can be painful lessons, especially when we're talking about district-wide mass communication. But I do credit, honestly, Heather and Mark have been instrumental in the identification of this, the rollout, and just even the willingness to probably answer some of the questions we ask them maybe weekly, and they always pretend it's the first time we've asked them, which is invaluable when you're learning a new tool, to not be judged by the experts. So maybe they've met privately and scolded us, but they've never showed it. But so in truth, we really don't want families to feel like, why did they do this thing that's making my life harder? We want to make their lives easier. So,
and I think it's a great tool, and I'm glad we have it. And I know it has great, capabilities in being able to put it in different languages and do lots of really cool things. So I'm very excited for it. I think I just wanted to make sure we were continuing to think about what does training look like for the people that may not know how to use it yet.
Absolutely.
And then the last question I have, I was reading about all the great partnerships. Vicki was very much talking about the 214 one, but we have many. And I think I was just curious about recognition of those great partnerships. Like we have this great thing at the library right now with all the, Portrait of a Graduate, and there's lots of different people that we work with. And I'm just curious about, how do we also tell the community about those partnerships and the things that we're doing, and if there's a way to like recognize that piece.
Yeah, I am certainly open to that, and I think it's a good reminder that I too sometimes, as this report is being compiled, it's also always a reminder about the importance of storytelling and making sure that people are aware of the things that are happening. Some of it we're more successful in telling the stories about and making visible, and other things we're probably just doing and not taking a moment to talk about or publicize. So I think that's a good reminder, and I think from my administration's team, I know we're always happy to keep widening how we're making visible some of those partnerships. So if the board would like to see more of that, I think we can do so in a variety of ways. We can use social media to tell those stories. We can feature those in our board meetings. We can incorporate those more specifically in my superintendent messaging. I mean, there's just any number of ways we can do it, but it's a good reminder of just the importance of making sure people see the interconnectedness between our district and the vitality of our community, because they're really inseparable.
Yeah, I mean, I think, goal area 4 is family and community partnerships. And I think the more you guys are doing such fantastic work, and I think it deserves the recognition too, to say how much we've been reaching out to different groups of people and, being able to find like the pipelines from 214 to do that. I mean, there's just lots of things that are done, and I don't know that you probably fully recognize all of them either. And I think it's just important to share with the community like how we're trying to work as a community and how important those partnerships are. So
thank you.
Yep, that's all I got.
Anyone else? Chris, go ahead.
So first of all, I just would echo I think what Vicki and Jen both said about our collaboration with 214. I think honestly this is one of the real great accomplishments that we've made over the last couple of years. And Dr. Gore, I commend you for really leading the way and making that happen. So I think that's awesome. I know we're getting so close, I think, to exactly what we're looking for, but it's been awesome, and I'm sure we'll have Vicki help us with that, as you said. Question on goal 2. And this is the review and update district-wide assessment and feedback practices. I know there's been a lot of data gathering on this, and I'm curious, and maybe it's too early to answer this, and if so, that's okay. But what gaps are we starting to see? I mean, are there themes emerging? Are there roads we want to go down further? I'm interested in this topic, and I'm curious what all the data that you're gathering so far is telling you.
Yep. Dr. Vonderhaar, do you want to jump in?
So we are still in the process of gathering that. So we have a committee that is made up of staff, teachers, and community members, and we're really looking at those 3 areas of grading, assessment, and, homework. Thank you. Grading, progress reports, and homework. And so our committee has done a really good job in identifying the areas that we want to gather more input in. And so we had just met, I think, last month, and we are going to refine. We want to do a survey for students, staff, and families about those different topics and really get their perception. And then we also want to gather feedback from staff and students in particular about what the different practices for those areas. So that is going to be happening in the spring, and then that information is going to be coming back to our committee this spring to identify where we want to go moving forward. So we've identified areas that we want to gather more information in, and we are in the process of just finalizing what those surveys look like. So that will be coming in the next month or 2.
Okay, and I assume that would be something you guys would be presenting at a future board meeting?
Yes.
Awesome.
I think we've talked about this, and I appreciate you being, honest about like the concerns or the questions you have of it. This is a massive undertaking, and it's, I think, a little overwhelming even within a
K-8 district where you have, or preschool 8, I should say, preschool through 8th grade, and just taking on these topics. There's like a lot of philosophical alignment that we need to make. There's a lot of practical alignments we need to consider. So I do appreciate and expect that we will continue to have to be accountable to what the work is, what are we measuring, and what are we aspiring to. But I think the approach has been to try to be really led by the wisdom of the experts who are working with students and being able to honestly say what are the issues that they're experiencing, listening to families and letting them have space to say, this is what works well from our perspective and our students' experience. This is what is making them absolutely hate being a student because of these experiences. And you do hear those stories, So I think just trying to be listening to what people want. I think the quality of that survey will be essential for any hopes of positive outcomes from the work. So I do understand, and we'll provide updates for the board and present ultimately where we're at. We can do that probably, it sounds like at the June meeting, because it will have the survey results in the spring, if not sooner. So we can work together.
And again, I appreciate, as you said, Dr. Gore, the immenseness of this work. My only caution from having gone through some of this, not like this, but similar, really trying to boil the ocean almost, is we not allow ourselves to suffer from paralysis by analysis too much. I mean, we can get in this rut of we need to collect more data, and pretty soon we have no idea what to do with it. So I'm not saying at all that's what's happening, but I can absolutely see the risk of that with a topic of this magnitude. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. The goal 7, which is the survey. Just curious why November was picked as the month to do this, as opposed to, maybe the end of the year when, you might get a little bit more honest. Not honest. I mean, I'm sure they're honest, but by now your staff is at the end of the year. If there are any frustrations just from being a little bit burned out, you might be more likely to hear them then than earlier in the year. Not criticizing it, just curious why that time was picked.
I don't think there's a super scientific response. I think some of it had to do when we were ready within our goal of implementing the survey. And I think once you do it, what's more important is wherever is your kind of baseline season of doing it, making sure that you're not limiting that data collection to just being that formal survey, but to deciding how do we continue to ask questions. Maybe it's not like death by survey and we keep surveying, but trying to use whatever is the season you've collected that and then determine what is a reasonable path to continue to ask more informing questions based on what people felt at that time. Trust me, I think we do recognize that there's pros and cons to the fall. You could make a case that that's an ideal time. You could make a case that that's the worst time. I think our partners with School Perceptions could speak very interestingly about how they see sort of changes within the time of year, and people's stress levels. And it's fair. I think what's more important for us is to be consistent about for next year, if we did it November our first year, let's try to strive for always November so that we're at least not comparing any of the pros or cons of the season against, apples to apples. But School Perceptions did say some districts choose to do 2 a year, but they said it's less common because, it's not always as sensitive to growth. You want to give yourself enough opportunity to make some meaningful changes so people feel like I'm going to continue to be honest with my employer because I can see that they actually listened and I can see some differences versus I'm not even going to take this next year because it was a waste of my time and no one listened anyways. So I think we're trying to really stay committed to those factors, but there wasn't any specific, guidance that I can recall from School Perception about not doing it in the fall versus the benefits.
Sure. And I will just say anecdotally, NSSEO has been doing this for several years.
Yeah.
And originally, for the first 4 years, they were doing them all in the fall, pretty much right after the school year started. And the data they were getting was very positive. Last year, and this was actually something I was suggesting is, gosh, when staff has been at school for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
everything probably seems great, right? They're still basking in the glow of summer vacation, and so they did it in May. Data was very different. And I think that was pretty eye-opening for us to see that. This is kind of the end of the year, and we got very different responses. And so now we've been doing it early in the year and then at the end. And that allows us not only to compare year over year, but over the course of the school year to see how our perceptions changing. So.
And I think we're totally open to that possibility. And I think one of the many things we loved about school perception and continue to be grateful for is they're very collaborative, they're very informed and experts in this work, but they are very great thought partners in the possibilities of what we might continue to evolve in our process. So I don't see any strong rigidity about our willingness to keep evolving this. And one of our themes has been in sharing this information with staff to make sure we're also being very consistent in saying survey data is important for a number of reasons. It's also not going to be the difference of solving the problem that you see in front of you every day if it can be solvable by going to your direct supervisor or by going to a trusted colleague or by going to your union leadership. We don't want to be a district that is good about being honest once a year about things that could be big barriers to kids' experiences. So yes, we're going to keep doing this because it is a one forum for people to have a risk-free way of being honest. But our ultimate goal is to keep nurturing a culture that we are always honest and willing to trust our supervisors and each other to say things that are hard, because we know that saying it is going to mean that we can start addressing it. And to that, I really also want to just shout out MPEA leadership and MPESPA leadership, because without their voices of agency on that, I think that we'd be potentially losing some of our staff and believing it, because it's one thing for me to say it, but there's a lot of people that say, I'm not sure if I'm willing to, there's going to be some hidden consequences for being honest about something that isn't going well. We can all appreciate that, but if someone from my union leadership is saying that, that's a great vote of confidence that they've given us and a trust that we're trying to really nurture. So
no, that's great. And 79% response rate is really good for a survey like this. So
I know we're going to try. Good. If nothing else, we're going to try to have a higher response rate next year.
and then
goal
last
number
question,
1.
Goal 5, wellness bingo. Tell me about that. That sounds awesome.
Well, the master of wellness is sitting at this table. So
is that on his business card?
Absolutely. Other duties as assigned. Wellness Bingo has been great. Karen Schwartzwald and I run the wellness program for the district, and really just trying to do what we can with staff, and so to help support them and give them just different ways to enjoy their position, their jobs, working with each other. So Wellness Bingo, 3 weeks, different bingo card each week, and staff have the opportunity to get bingo in a variety of different ways, from reading a book, taking a walk, giving a compliment, all these different things that they can do to get bingo, submit a form and get entered into a drawing for some prizes. And if they fill the entire board, they get entered into a drawing for a lunch. The school with the highest percentage gets a treat as well. So a real lot of fun. Part of this month as well, we had a wellness corporation come in free of charge, always nice, to come and work with staff and give them some wellness screenings and the such. So that's nice. And next month we're working on our pickleball tournament for staff. So we had it last year and it was a big hit. So we're working on that for next month as well.
I was thinking, how about a staff gaga ball?
We actually may have that happen. It was an idea for May.
Kids would love to see that.
Yes, I'm sure.
All right, thank you.
You didn't know that's what Jason got his doctorate in, wellness? That's why.
He's a man of many talents. What can I say?
Any other questions? Okay. We can move on then to a preview of our fiscal year 26 staffing plan.
Right, and so Karen Schwartzwald, our HR director, is here tonight, and she will be presenting our initial proposal for the first read of next year's staffing plan. Thank you, Karen.
Good evening, Is it on? Oh, it is? Okay. I will project. Good evening, everyone. Included in your packet was a preview of next year's staffing plan. The overall change in it is not enormous, but there's a lot that goes into it. And so I want to talk through where we got the information from and then what the changes we're proposing are. We get information from a lot of things. We look at student enrollment first and foremost. We did program evaluations. How are different programs doing? What kind of supports do they need? Are the supports that we have in place the correct ones, or does staffing need to be shifted within the programs? We also looked at our consideration of local norms, and by that I mean, what are other districts doing as far as staffing, as far as ratios, et cetera? It's something that we, for instance, brought to you last year when we felt like we were out of line with our middle school class sizes. And so that's something that we continue to look at and make sure, are we consistent with our peers in the area? So you'll note that, let's see if this goes. Can you go one more? Back one. An overview is that there's an overall decrease of 2.3 full-time equivalent, or FTE, of certified staffing in the plan, and an increase of 0.5 ESP, or educational support personnel staffing. Included in that are a decrease of 3 classroom teachers, 2 at Lions Park and 1 at Lincoln. And that's really due to each individual class size and where we are with, just sort of where that cutoff is with that. The best example I can give you is, I think we all know that there's a very large class right now in 8th grade at Lincoln. So as they leave, we just need 1 less classroom teacher at Lincoln for next year. Can you go one more? Thank you. Student services obviously is a huge area of our staffing plan, and there are some small changes that we're asking for within that. There's a early childhood special education program that we're only going to need half of the day next year. So that would decrease 0.5 FTE. We're also asking for an increase of 1.0 special education teachers, specifically so that we can have reintroduce the SOAR program to Lincoln. And we need to just make a small shift to the speech language pathologist FTE at Lions Park. We're doing a little bit of internal shifting, but these are the changes that will actually be increases or decreases on our overall staffing plan. And then multilingual learner staffing is by far, in a lot of ways, the most complex thing to staff right now. First of all, we've had an enormous number of students move in and out of the district, mostly in the district this year, that are multilingual learners. We also don't get that data until May or June. So we are kind of always playing catch up. Right now we're trying to forecast how many students do we think are going to move in, how many students do we think are going to pass, and by pass, reach a level on the access test where they no longer qualify for services. And so those are kind of interesting things to try to predict. And we've one more X factor this year, which is that if any of our schools reach 20 or more students that speak the same language, we're required to open a program. A long time ago, there was such a program at Westbrook, but it's been a long time since there was a TBE, or a transitional bilingual education program, in one of our buildings. But we are forecasting a need for that next year at Lincoln. We forecast currently 22 students at Lincoln that are multilingual learners and whose Spanish is their primary language, or Spanish is their language other than English, or one of them. And so we will need to open up, by state law, a section at Lincoln. So those are like things that we're trying to estimate and then make it particularly hard. For next year, with our multilingual learners, we are asking to keep staffing the same and then add in that extra section at Lincoln of that bilingual teacher. We currently do have a bilingual interventionist at Lions Park in Fairview. That is a grant-funded position. We have a disproportionality finding for the last few years, and so that has funded an additional teacher. We no longer are actually qualifying under that disproportionality, and we are recommending that we remove that position. This is an area that we're going to closely monitor, and we're going to closely keep you up to date with, because we're not sure that we are hopeful that we've made the right decisions right now, but it's one that's very, very hard at this moment in time for us to know what it will look like in the spring and in the fall. Sections to watch. I always try to look and see what sections do I think we might need to make changes on. I in no way anticipate that all of the sections that I've listed are going to need to change. I don't think that at all. But these are sections that we have to watch because numbers are tight. Kindergarten and first grade have just been difficult to predict over the last few years. And while we love small class sizes, we also don't want classes of 15 because we're just having lots and lots of sections. So those are two that we'll continue to watch. Lions Park has a very small class going into Lions Park, so that's something we're going to continue to watch and see if we have more than normal students come to Lions Park next year. And then we currently have big fourth grades at both of our buildings. We think that for fifth grade next year, we have the right number of teachers. We don't anticipate a lot of move-ins, but if we were to have a bunch, that would make a difference. And then, as I said, the multilingual supports. That's all I have tonight. What questions do you have?
Yes, what questions? Okay, well, if nobody's going to jump in, oh, sorry.
Excuse me, sorry, I was going to go last, but since.
Well, I have something if you don't.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
I'm curious about the TBE section that you mentioned and having like a dedicated multilingual, bilingual teacher. Can you just explain a little bit more like what in practice that looks like? Is this a teacher that's doing all the different subjects with this group of students, or are they transitioning the way that they, like a typical student would?
I think either way. I think we anticipate that they would transition the way that our typical students do, because we know that's probably best for students as they acclimate. But what it will offer is us to find opportunities during the day where students have the opportunity to have instruction either supported by or given by a bilingual teacher. So it might be that support is within their language arts class, but instead of it being a wonderful multilingual teacher, it would be a teacher who is bilingual, who could look at text or help with bringing their language into the curriculum. And I'll let Kristen add.
Sure, and I'll just add, there are certain requirements that the Illinois State Board of Education has for these programs. So there's a full-time program, there's a part-time program, and part of that depends on how students score on that access test that Karen was mentioning. And then, so a lot of it, we're going to have to wait and see. So like Karen said, we are currently projecting 22 students who speak Spanish. There's also a component of talking with families and seeing what type of programming they want for their students. So it is hard to predict, but like Karen mentioned, there's going to be time during the day where students are receiving instruction within Spanish, within their language. So hard to say exactly, but that's the requirement, if that makes sense. Any questions with that?
No, I was just curious, and I know you mentioned it's not something that we've had to do for a while, so I'm sure, this will be an opportunity to kind of approach it with fresh eyes, obviously with the requirements in mind, but also, kind of figure out what works. And I'm assuming we're in this position of looking at adding this at Lincoln because we have a cohort from Lions and Fairview that are coming together to make that number, that like critical mass.
Yes, and we currently have quite a few students at Lincoln who speak Spanish right now as well. And then just to give some added context, so when we had our program last at Westbrook, it was for Polish. And so we ended up having a part-time TBE program. So like I mentioned, students would go to that teacher to receive Polish instruction for a part of the day, and then they were in their gen ed classes the rest of the day.
Got it. Okay. So. And then I had a question with regard to the bilingual interventionist. I understand, we don't qualify for grant funding for that position anymore. Is that the basis of the rationale for kind of cutting off that position, or is it also a matter of we don't have the need anymore?
I mean, I think that
Or maybe those two things go together, right?
I mean, I think we could always argue that more staff is helpful. And when we're talking about something like students who are multilingual, more support is wonderful. I think that without the findings, probably would like to just look at how we're delivering support and making sure that we have a model that's as flexible as possible to support the needs of our multilingual students. So that was a very specific job, and I think we would love to look at it a little bit more generally with our general multilingual and intervention staff.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was curious. I'd be inclined to agree, right? And of course, that's the ideal, right? The more support we can have, the better. Of course, that costs money. And so I guess I was just wanting to understand the rationale, right? If it would be something worth investing in with district funds, even though we don't have the grant money available, and it sounds like that's not a place where we are at the moment. If we were going to spend the money, we would want to spend it on something that was maybe a little more broad or kind of flexible, like you said. Okay. Anybody else? Chris, go ahead.
So I have a question and then a comment/suggestion. But the question first, the early childhood reduction from 4 to 3.5, is that because we're just seeing decreased enrollment in the Circle of Friends, or what's, because I know there was a waiting list, maybe there still is, but.
It's a really specific need. So we opened up a program for students with more complex needs within the Circle of Friends program. This year we had a large cohort of them, and so we needed 2 sections of them in order to really meet their needs. These are students that are receiving part of their instruction in the special education setting, as well as accessing the blended programming. Next year, there just aren't that many students that kind of fall within that complex needs to need that more specialized instruction. So it's not that we've increased enrollment overall, but it's about how many students really need that kind of classroom.
Okay. Is there still a waiting list for Circle
That
of
is a
Friends?
really good question, yes.
So we still do the lottery?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then my suggestion comment, it's a long one, so I'm going to read some of it. So bear with me a little bit. But it's really revolving around what I don't see on our staffing plan that I'd like to see. The safety threat that occurred in one of our schools this past November has really forced me, and I'm sure all of us, to reflect on the fact that our district, sadly, is not immune from the risk of the horrible, violent tragedies that have occurred way too often across the country. I and all of us, of course, are relieved that no one was harmed as a result of this threat, but I frankly believe we'd be pretty naive to think that we can maintain the status quo and not take any additional action and just hope that we will always be that lucky. There's a sobering reality we're all facing right now. According to a recent Washington Post article, since Columbine in 1999, when I was a sophomore in college, more than 390,000 students in the U.S. have experienced gun violence at school. School shootings are tragically on an upward trend in the United States. According to an October 2024 press release from the Everytown Support Fund for Gun Safety, there were 106 injuries and 46 deaths from gun violence on school grounds in the U.S. in 2024. 46. According to that same press release, there's been a sharp increase in school shootings since the pandemic. 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 all represented the highest numbers of school shootings each year in the last 20 years. When I was a District 57 student, 32 years ago now, it seems like a long time, the notion of lockdown drills was a completely foreign concept. Now, for my 2 girls and all the kids that attend our schools, it's a very sadly necessary annual ritual. The sad reality is that there's still far too easy access to weapons capable of producing mass numbers of casualties in schools. Until or unless that changes, we need to accept this reality and proactively do everything possible to protect our kids and our staff. Our vision which we all see all around our schools, which is great, is to inspire every student every day to reach their full potential. No student or staff member can achieve their full potential without feeling safe and secure in school each and every day. I absolutely commend Dr. Gore and our administration for the improvements we've made in securing our schools over the last several years. And I know we've done a lot, but I really feel more needs to be done. We have some really exciting times ahead for us as a district. We have the construction and design of a new Lincoln, which is amazing. The implementation of full-day kindergarten, the expansion of Westbrook. But none of this is going to matter at all if we can first and foremost keep our schools secure and our children and staff safe. So one such improvement I would like to see us pursue as a district is the implementation of a school resource officer program. We're very lucky in our district and our village that our district and the Mount Prospect Police Department have a rich history of fantastic collaboration. And this move would be a natural next step in our relationship with them. Bringing an SRO to District 57 would be a proactive move that would bring many benefits toward improving the safety of our schools and in other areas. Having an SRO available at a school diminishes critical response time when every second matters, when a violent incident or emergency occurs. This can make all the difference when a threat on school grounds occurs. SROs can be wonderful resources for students and staff in providing education on crime prevention and justice issues. They can provide training and present information to parents and the community on relevant crime and legal issues, such as signs of substance abuse, gang involvement, and other areas. SROs can play and have played in many areas the very important role of informal counselor. In schools with successful SRO programs, students often view and turn to SROs to discuss issues, and they're able to provide guidance on the stressful life situations in other areas, the illegality of pranks, and other important issues. An SRO program would certainly not be free. No question about that. But I would look at what we as a district would spend on such a program as an investment, not a cost. And why is that? Because I strongly believe that what we would get out of it will be far more than what we put in. Feeling safe in school is extremely closely connected to achieving academic and social emotional outcomes for students. It allows our staff and teachers to be at their very best every day, focusing on doing the great work that we know they all do, rather than having to worry about their own safety and security. So my ask of Dr. Gore and the administration team is to work with the Mount Prospect Police Department to start putting together a proposal on how an SRO program might work in District 57. Success of these programs is complicated. It depends on the proper selection of a specially trained officer or officers to work inside of our schools. I have no doubt that we'd be able to leverage our great relationship with the Mount Prospect Police Department to identify an ideal candidate and work together on what that program would look like. It's critical that we take the time to put the required thought into what such a program would look like. This is not something to be taken lightly, not something to be rushed into. I want to take the time to make sure we go about this the right way, so I don't come to you today with any expectations about specific timelines that I would ask you to put a proposal together. But I would like for us to begin this very important work and to direct the administration to keep the board apprised of when we might be able to expect such a proposal. We, unfortunately, as a district, are not leaders in this area. Many elementary school districts in the surrounding communities have successfully implemented SRO programs, including communities that are right around us and next to us. District 25, 59, 21, 34, and 62 have all implemented successful SRO programs. I believe the time is now for us to make this very important investment in the safety and security of our children, our staff, and the peace of mind of our families and our community. That's it.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I don't expect you, Karen, to comment on that.
This wasn't necessarily directed at you.
Yes, no.
Gathered.
But no, I certainly appreciate you raising, we do talk a lot about what's being proposed, and I appreciate you, Chris, taking the opportunity to, I guess, speak into what might be missing. And I mean, to that regard, it actually reminds me of a question that I had with regard to our mental health professionals at Lincoln in particular, but across the district. I feel like recently there was a proposal in a previous staffing plan to increase our staffing in that regard, and I'm understanding that's not changed.
No, we are making a slight shift of 0.2 from Lions Park SOAR program to Lincoln, but there's no overall increase proposed. We increased a psychologist last year and social work support the previous years.
Okay, and that's all been functioning as expected?
Yeah.
As much as possible. I know at the time we talked about it, I seemed like I recalled that was a difficult position to fill, and we were maybe concerned about staffing, so.
Staffing the social worker and psychologist
That's
positions. Right. They are very difficult to fill. We have been able to fill them. We're very lucky. We have some amazing new psychologists and newish social workers in the district. But they are hard to fill positions.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions about the staffing plan? I do want to address the proposal that Chris made.
It's about his proposal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're good. Thank you. So I'm trying to think through procedurally how to go about, Chris, what you've introduced. I guess we'll call it, there's a motion on the table to instruct administration to do some data finding, some fact gathering in terms of cost, primarily, I would assume, but also, I guess, I don't know. Chris, do you
Well,
want
let
to
me
speak
make
into?
something clear. I didn't make a motion because I can't do that. This wasn't on the agenda. So what I am
Fair enough.
asking for is to direct the administration to start gathering some facts and proposals on what this would look like, right?
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting that we would vote on whether or not we think that's a good idea right now, because frankly, I don't think any of us have enough information to make that decision.
Okay.
What I'm proposing is that I think there is enough of a reason for us to look into it further, and I would like the administration team to collaborate. And again, we spoke earlier tonight about all the wonderful community collaboration that's going on, and it's absolutely true, and I know the police department is one group that we've always had a great relationship with. And so the ask is to have the administration team work with the police department on what this would look like. Structure, costs, guardrails, how would we go about selecting an SRO? That's a really important aspect of all this. You know, I can tell you that, friends and family members who are teachers who are in schools with SROs, that's a critical piece. And we have to get that right. So that's my ask. It's not a motion. It's an ask of the administration team to come back to us with that.
Okay. And I appreciate that, right, the technicality. I do think, though, that in order to give administration a clear direction, right, no one of us has the capacity to say, Dr. Gorgoa, do this particular thing. So
Sadly, that is true.
I do think that it merits some conversation
Sure,
and some
of course.
buy-in from.
I'd love to have that conversation.
Sure. I'm just trying to think sort of how we would go about doing that.
Well, Vicki has a question already.
Vicki does have a question already. I suppose.
Not a question, just a comment.
Okay.
Response.
Okay. I'll let you go ahead. I'm trying to sort of frame the conversation as much as possible, because I'm aware that there are some potentially strong feelings about the concept of a school resource officer, and so I don't necessarily want those feelings to color the conversation or to, and maybe that's not possible. Maybe I'm asking for a unicorn, so sorry. Go ahead.
So I preface everything by saying I agree. I think every single person in this room agrees that student safety is the most important thing. Physical, emotional, right? You send your kids to school, you want them to come home. If a student isn't safe or doesn't feel safe, they can't learn, they can't function. Yeah, so student safety is the most important thing. I think we all 100% agree. I also feel that by jumping ahead to selecting a school resource officer as the solution, or even as the first primary solution, is going too far. That there's probably a host of other amazing opportunities, effective things that we can also pursue or investigate at the same time. So I wouldn't want administration to start looking specifically into that solution. I would rather have them start looking into all possible solutions. That could be one of them, but all options, all solutions, kind of investigate that and bring that before us. So I don't want to.
I'm absolutely all for that. Okay. I think if we have 4 or 5 options on how we're going to go about this, great. Let's bring them all to the table and figure out what's best to move forward. What I really want to do is have that discussion. I think we need to have a serious discussion about school safety and security here. And what I'm proposing is one way to go about it, but I'm sure there are lots of other ideas. I think we should talk about all of them and figure out as a group the best way forward.
Okay. Eileen?
Jen actually had her mic lit first.
If you want to go, go.
Okay. When was the last time we did a security audit? I can't remember how long. How many years has it been? How many?
It was before I was on the board. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 2020.
So maybe that would be a process also to do a security audit again and to see where we're at with that. I also think with our new student school board members, I think having their voice in this is also key since they are part of the school, and also staff. I think you need to have everybody's input on how they would feel and with having an SRO or what other options we might have out there for safety and security.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
One thing I've always appreciated about this district is we do things on a very data-driven way. This is not right now data-driven. And I think if we're going to do this, if we're going to have this conversation, I would like the data from the building as to why we need that, like these specific things. And so if we're going to go down this route, I want to understand what are the needs from the students, what are the needs from the community, what are the needs from the parent, from the staff, right? Why is this the thing? I think we've had very serious conversations about safety and security in this district. I think we do it every year.
I disagree with that, but I respect your opinion.
Okay. My turn. I think we've had very serious conversations about, what Jason brings every spring to us to do over the summer, the things that we've done to make an impact on safety and security in these buildings. I think we need to have a very, I don't want you to go to the police and start having this conversation. I don't think that's the time for that yet. I think if you want to research different ways to bring different types of, safety and security to this building, then fine, let's have that conversation. I think we're way too far ahead. I've been in buildings with SROs. I probably have the most experience with SROs out of anyone sitting at this table right now. And I can say, yeah, they were super nice to me. I also know there were students who were terrified walking down the building with people with guns walking behind them. Just is. And so I think we need to be very careful right now in really thinking about what does this district need most? How do we go about it? What is the data that supports that? We need to make this on a data-driven basis and not any other way. And so I feel very strongly if you want to go out and figure out different things you could bring, fine, let's do that. But I do not think starting with an SRO is the correct way to go about it. We need to figure out what all the options are.
Sure, and that's very similar, I think, to what I was going to say. I think if we want to have a conversation about safety generally, right, Chris, you even acknowledged there's lots of different ways to handle that. And I think the primary starting point, as you said, Jen, is to really take stock of where we are now. We had that incident several months ago, and thank goodness everything was handled appropriately and timely, and I think successfully. But Chris, to your point, right, that doesn't mean that every situation will be like that. And we're also in a position of expanding. I mean, we're building a new middle school, and we're expanding our young learner building, and those new facilities and spaces will carry their own challenges, right? So we want to be thinking ahead about those things too. Corinne, did you want to add something?
Yes. From what everybody has said, and it seems like the best place to start in this conversation is more of a needs assessment, because you 100% feel the need for this. Jen does not feel the need for this whatsoever. So needs to be a needs assessment. I would think that would be the first thing that we would move forward with, to see if this is something that's even, whether it's practical or important or necessary for this district. I worry deeply about the amount of work that we would be putting on administration's desk to say, hey, let's look at all of our possible safety options. It's an enormous amount of work. So seeing if a needs assessment might be a more targeted way of using their time. And the last thing is, with those two new buildings, or the additions to Westbrook and the new Lincoln, there is a really extraordinary opportunity that I think is being taken seriously in the design of those new buildings. It's not going to be retrofitting an old building to current needs. It's going to be building a new building with current needs in mind. And I think that's going to be a really big piece that might alleviate a lot of the concerns that the accessibility in our buildings make. One of the things I was thinking of is we went to Atia Middle School, and they have this is a relatively simple, straightforward thing. They have a separate entrance that goes directly into their sports areas, their basketball courts, those kinds of things, that is they only can access it from that particular entrance after school hours. There is a locked down door between that section of the school and the rest of the school, and the rest of the school is completely blocked off and locked down. That's something that we can consider in our building of a new building, how we can use those kinds of things and those kinds of opportunities to provide more security and safety. That doesn't necessarily mean an officer in the building, because that's what, $150,000 that we're putting out for an officer, that we as a school are going to have to pay. $100,000 to $150,000, I think. And that's something that I know for myself, I would much rather put that money to different use. So that would be my suggestion, is to take the desire for safety improvements and to point towards either a security audit, like Eileen said, or a needs assessment from administration at this point.
Pam, go ahead.
Some of the groups that I've been affiliated with this year, there are people who very much promote Moms Demand Action group, and I thought that we had an email from someone who was asking to do a program on gun safety. I think involving the community in these decisions via a survey, having a program, having programs and get people involved, because there's nothing wrong about talking about how to safely store guns, what to look for if your student is having mental depression, having issues. I think that is something that is important. It's going to be time consuming because it's involving people. I believe it's Mary Kay Baldino, who is a very strong advocate for Moms Demand Action. Red, Wine, and Blue frequently has digital programs asking people to host programs like this. That's a start. And what's good about it in my mind is that it's involving the community. So you're getting the pressure from the parents, from the family saying, this is what I want. I'm not going to accept bullying. I'm not going to accept misbehavior that would be harmful to my student and other families. And I'm going to do a little bit of a side rant here. I posted something on one of the Facebook groups. There was Jacqueline. There was an 11-year-old girl in Gainesville, Texas, and I did do the research on it. I did I was going to call the Gainesville Intermediate School, but then I thought no, because there might be a lawsuit that they're involved in. I ended up calling the library. The person who I spoke with first actually hung up on me. I called back and I spoke with the reference librarian, who said that they didn't have any newspaper articles on it yet, but she sent me to the Gainesville Daily Register. And I spoke with Sally Sexton, who is beginning an article.
Tam, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm conscious of our time.
Right,
and
I was the one who,
I just want to make sure that we're focusing on.
Right, and so it's becoming more prevalent, and I really think that that we need to, if we're doing this, we need to involve the community and start get that. It could be in addition to, it could be the beginning of the start. Let's see what our families want. When I was a candidate 2 years ago, I got a lot of feedback about how the quote was, I'm not afraid of shooters in the building. I'm afraid of what an SRO might do to my child. I was shocked, but I understand differently. I understand from a different angle now.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think that community input piece is important regardless of what action might be taken or whether any action is taken. And I think I'm hearing a consensus for some level of a needs assessment, and going through that process would certainly inform us as a board, give us some additional information from which to make decisions, and also then give the community the opportunity to take a look at what we found out and give their feedback too, right? As people who access the schools via their children or directly, to speak to, what they see are maybe some gaps or even some benefits, right? It doesn't have to be, I know a needs assessment kind of implies the deficiencies, right? But to the extent there's things that we're doing well that we can capitalize on, I think we'd want to see that information too. I don't have any specifics for you in terms of what that might look like. Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say a couple more things here. Jen, I completely acknowledge the experience that you've had with SROs. I will tell you that while I'm not a teacher, I don't spend my days in schools. I have a brother and a cousin who both teach and have been in schools with SROs and have said their experience has been fantastic. And I'll say my brother is not one to automatically love the police. He isn't. And yet I was actually one of the things in my own research on this that really turned me was his own experience with this, and him telling me this has been a fantastic addition to our school. So I recognize your experience, but I also think we need to recognize that lots of other kids have had great success with this. We talked about being data-driven. I absolutely respect that. Corinne, you threw out a number of 100 to 150K. I don't know where you got that from. Do we have a quote on what this would cost? I don't think we do. So I just want to make sure we're careful before we throw numbers out there, that we are in fact being data-driven and get those actual numbers. So
I can just let you know, I don't recall off the top of my head how much it was, but it was when District 25 was bringing their SRO on board, and it was the salary that they were
and that's
hiring
different
from.
district. We don't know if that would be the same thing here. There are lots of arrangements districts have. Sometimes the police split the cost, sometimes they pay more. So I don't want the community thinking, oh my God, that's what this is going to cost. I think if we go this route, we should actually get the data. I forget who it was that said we don't want to burden Dr. Gore with the time it would take to research all these things. And Dr. Gore, I apologize for saying this. Frankly, when it comes to safety and security, I have no problem having you invest your time as much as is needed to make sure we do the right thing here. So I hate to say that, but and then I guess last thing on the needs, I've heard two things said. We need to do a needs assessment again, and we need to involve the community. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is we don't share the results of the needs assessment publicly, right? So I've heard, well, we got to do a needs assessment and then tell the community what we found and then make a decision. I don't know how that works. So are we going to do a needs assessment and involve the community? And if so, how are we going to do that and when? I guess I want this discussion to be more than just here are some things we could do. I'd like us to take some action.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think in the past, when we've made security upgrades and taken specific action with regard to security, we haven't necessarily disclosed like the details of that, right? Because that would defeat the purpose. I think when it comes to the needs, right, there would be a little bit of a qualitative aspect to that in terms of, do you feel safe in the schools, right? And what would make you feel safer? Would you want more support from counselors? Would you want this or that? And I don't, obviously there's a way to go about that and to do it in a way that yields valuable feedback. And so that's something I think we want to look into, and that I think is the piece that the community would have the biggest opportunity to speak into.
So are we directing Dr. Gore to do this?
That's what I was about to establish,
Okay.
yeah. Pam, what did you want to add?
I just wanted to add something to what Chris just said. I'm not saying that we tell the community. I'm saying that the community tells us.
Right.
That it's a partnership, and we hear. I'm a big advocate for getting people's ideas and getting people's thoughts. I don't necessarily, as I was answering the surveys from the different newspapers, it hit me that we don't, in some aspects, curriculum, whatnot, we make the decision. The professionals make the decision. But in other aspects, when you're looking at a pathway to take, what we did with the town hall, you get input from your community. My library experience is that the insurance companies that we work with, Gallagher Bassett, at most public libraries, will ask if they can come in and walk through the facility and give us things to work on, things to improve. And so for us, it was a big deal. Gallagher Bassett risk analysis person would come and walk with our manager of operations and with our head of building security and maintenance and security. And it would be about an hour. They'd go through every room, every door, everything, and then they would come back with a list. That list wasn't shared with staff. You might hear some of the things that were on the list, which I wouldn't say publicly right now. You don't, one of the questions, I can't remember if it was Journal or Herald.
Pam, I'm going to interrupt you again. What you're describing is very similar, I think, to the security audit that we did a number of years ago.
Exactly.
I don't know that that's necessarily what we're talking about doing again, because as you mentioned, right, it's very intensive, very involved. I think there's a way to go about getting the information that we need in a little bit of an informal way, and then maybe if that's not satisfactory, we could dig a little deeper and try to find a more, I guess, thorough is not the word I want to use, but sort of a more granular look at the information that we had. Again, I don't mean to cut you off. I want to make sure we're closing out the conversation and moving on to what.
Well, I just wanted to add one more thing. If we're building a new school right now, as someone said, it's important to get feedback as we're building it and get the state of the art. But to spend to make decisions based on an old facility is not necessarily feasible. You know, we should look at, which we've already done and which we do on a regular basis, look at ways to increase security, but don't necessarily divulge what we're doing.
Of course.
I could tell you things privately that we've done in libraries, facilities that I've worked at, but I would never tell anybody outside of the, trusted people some of those things, because that would put staff in danger.
Of course, yeah. And so I think, like I said, with regard to seeking community feedback, it would be more in terms of, potentially assessing parents' experience via their children in terms of safety in the schools. And like I said, sort of getting that qualitative piece. And we'll have a more, I guess, quantitative, to the extent you can have a quantitative perspective from, looking at, I suppose it would be number of disciplinary incidents and things like that. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I'm just trying to think it out. But I did hear a consensus about doing a needs assessment. I know. Did you want to add something?
On the data collection piece, I think also sense of belonging data, thinking about how those pieces are really important in this conversation too, about how students are feeling in classrooms, in the school. So similar to parents giving that feedback,
Right.
I want student feedback in the same regard of that holistic because that sense of belonging is super important. And I think I really want to understand how are students feeling when they're at school, and how, what supports do we have that are here, and what supports are missing, right? There is, I'm thinking about the schools that I've been in. I mean, there are programs all over the place that we could bring in to talk about, what it means, that part, right? About what it means to belong. And I know we have some partnerships that already exist, but I think that there are more out there. And I think for me, that's what makes a school really safe, right? Is that every student feels like they're seen, valued, and heard in a building, and that they know that they belong and that they have that experience. And that is what keeps kids safe. Sure. So anyway,
I appreciate that. And I didn't, in talking about community and parents, I was thinking primarily outward facing, right? Of course, internally, there's lots of perspectives that we could gather. Eileen.
I just want to reiterate what Jen's saying about that sense of community, that sense of belonging. And any professional development school board thing, anytime I've done a security thing, key. That is the key thing, is that sense of community, that sense of belonging, knowing that there's someone there that you just have that connection with. That is key to keeping our kids safe.
I want to commend the board for having a difficult conversation in a way that really dignified each other and the topic. I would be remiss not to just give a sneak peek into what will be next month's presentation on the results from the survey, but I do want to just point out, because I think it's relevant, that our top 5 scores in our staff survey data was "I feel safe at work." That was the 3rd highest score. That's clearly not meant to invalidate the need for continuing to look more closely at this topic in general, but I do want to share that when we look at this and using a data-driven approach, I think it's about first weaving in what data we have that will exist within our control, such as student belonging surveys, connection surveys, and looking at our Lincoln team. I mean, there's a lot that's happening that I think could be useful and informative to this process. What I would ask for the board is permission to deliberate on tonight's discussion with my team so that I can put together a preliminary analysis on what we have and what we might not have. And I think once we have that, and when I say have, I'm talking about the data, like what survey data do we have? What security audit data do we have? What is our list of our inventory of existing information we have, and what might be a list of non-existent information, data around specifics around costs and different models that districts are using both locally and nationwide. What partners we might need to tap into to do some of this work just from a capacity standpoint, because I don't want to outsource anything unnecessarily, but I also want to be protective of the bandwidth of a team that's trying to aggressively pursue deadlines around our strategic plan and our buildings. So I do want to do this work in the way that it needs to be done, but I also want to be honest and upfront that we may have to tap into investing in some third-party relationships around how to do this work thoroughly, because I can tell it's a time-sensitive topic, but I also want to, so those are the things that I'm thinking about as I'm hearing the conversation. And so I think that I can provide that update for the board, certainly at the March meeting, but probably more preliminary before then through my communication with the board. But I can provide an update and a formal status at the March meeting, if that is agreeable.
I think that sounds great.
In terms of just a continuation of these topics and making sure I'm coming with some more refined next steps around what we need to complete this, what we propose would be necessary, and almost like a needs assessment before the needs assessment, because we like a committee on committee.
Needs assessment, yes.
So a needs assessment of it, yes. So does that seem, at least as an initial response?
I think
Love
so.
it.
Chris?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Did you want to say more than that
No,
since you have your mic
that's
on?
it. No.
Okay, no, I think that
I want
sounds
Mary
great.
to know how much I love that idea.
Yes, yeah. That makes the
Make
most
sure the
sense
notes
to me
reflect that.
to start with what we already have and go from there. So I appreciate you being efficient about that inquiry. And thank you all very much for chiming in and addressing that. I appreciate your respect and your camaraderie. Moving on to other exciting topics, we get to talk about our Building Brighter Futures update.
Awesome. So while we're transitioning to this topic, I do want to just give the nod to the admin there in the audience that you are class dismissed. You can go home and continue to work on your left. I'm not saying you've been working, but I meant it's not like you're going home and going to bed. If anything, I'm sure you're going to go home and keep working. So you don't have to do it in those chairs. So
we're going to pretend like Mary didn't say that on an open mic and encourage you to work after hours when you're not being.
Leave your laptops here. You can collect them during your work hours, which as an admin is all the time and non-defined.
Work-life balance.
Yeah.
Life balance.
Go balance from 9:30 to 6 a.m. Okay, we will stop this topic. Thank you. All right, so as you can see, there is a brief slideshow, and I just want to, again, take this opportunity to thank all the work that's been happening, even from month to month, which is really, Jason continues to be the motor on this work. He is the little engine that could, which is how we refer to our district, the small but mighty, but it takes an enormous amount of persistence and a drive that he has continued to keep moving this engine forward, because it's just a lot of collaboration with a lot of different people to keep everyone communicating and delivering on a way that's going to deliver us our outcomes. So I'll hand it over to Jason, but just thank him for the work he's been doing.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to kind of walk through, and you've seen some of these slides just to remind us kind of where we are in our process. And as Dr. Gore said, it's moving along. It's moving along at a record pace, but lots of good work, lots of collaboration, and we're definitely getting closer every month to the finish line. So we're still in phase one, schematic design, which is a pretty long phase phase for us in making sure that we get all of that input, understand exactly what is needed within the construction. We're starting here with Westbrook. We have at this point finished all of our focus groups, so we've met with all of the staff that we were able to meet with, came with great ideas, great thoughts, everything from big picture to outlets on the wall. It's always about outlets on the wall these days. And so we're having some great conversations there. Next slide, please. And so if you have never spent a lunch period over at Westbrook, I highly encourage it. It was the highlight of my day, and this was fresh off the presses because this was today. And so Mr. Hefner there, Marty Hefner and Carl Anderson were running their principal advisory committee. So they do it at Westbrook where they meet with a different class each month. And so all of the classes are having this opportunity to do this input, but they did it with this class this month because they happen to have principal advisory committee with this group, council with this group. And so the students started by giving just actually talking about what an architect is. And our architect was there, although didn't make any of these pictures, sorry. No, maybe. Oh, yes, in the back. There you go. Yep, he was blending into the climbing wall there. And so they started by just brainstorming ideas. Some of my favorites were a chocolate fountain, water slide, the Cheeto vending machine, very popular. And so it had to be free. That was definitely on the sign. And so they were putting up ideas on the wall. You can see there they were brainstorming. And then after that, they had an opportunity to draw as well. And so you have your conveyor belt that delivers you milk on the top left there. You have robot helpers that you can take home because you have to be able to take them home. And then this middle one on the bottom, kind of like a school that just kept going up all the way to 8th grade, which is really neat. There's a hot tub in 7th grade for some reason, and there is, I think it says the best playground is on the left there. They weren't finished yet, but that was, it's not finished, but it was definitely a good start. So they had really great ideas, but I will say that some of the ideas, I mean, even they talked about an elevator. They talked about a hallway to the music and art room that wasn't cold, which we do have in the plans. So really neat, comfy seating, the idea of not having the cafeteria in the gym. So really great input. And so this was first graders, but all of the students are having an opportunity to give that input. And it was really neat to see today. So really enjoyed that. We'll go on to the next slide. We have surveys going out. So we, staff surveys we've already sent and returned and received. We have surveys to community members and families. With students, they're obviously working with students in a little different way, but they're definitely getting that input from them. Next slide. We also have neighbors. And so we've sent, similar to what we did at Lincoln, we sent a letter to every neighbor around Westbrook, and it sends them off to a survey, but also tells them a little bit about the project, but it then sends them off to a survey where they can answer questions more like, concerns about construction or concerns about anything that's going to happen or just any input they want to give us. They also have an opportunity to sign up at that point to be one of our constant contacts. We'll keep pushing things out, but obviously people in the community, it's sometimes a little more difficult for us to get that information out to them quickly. And so they can sign up and then they can receive that information. And we've been sending stuff out to them to let them know what's going on. Next topic. We took some tours of some different learning spaces. So we went into Park Ridge and Glenview. Both have built wings onto schools recently. And so we look specifically at anything from multi-purpose rooms on the left or kindergarten rooms. They were pretty different just in the furniture and what the classrooms looked like, whether it was built in versus lots of movable furniture. And so we really had I think it was a great morning opportunity. We had all the kindergarten teachers, our librarian and music and art teacher, were able to come on that morning and just kind of take the tours and start having conversations and talk through even just the process of how they got to where they decided what these spaces would look like. So really neat opportunities. Next slide, please. And so that was Westbrook. So definitely moving along, feeling like we're in a good place. At Lincoln, we don't have as many pictures to show this month because it's more about at Lincoln really just moving along with, we're pretty close to finalizing, I shouldn't say finalizing because it's not even close to final, but really close to a point of what we would like to share with the village and share with the community. And so it starts with having that footprint and having the site plan. And so we're really, after taking in all the input from staff, community, students, parents were part of that community. And so really taking all of those, what are the interests, what are the needs, how do we, put that all together and then put out a product. And so we're getting there. The steering committee has been meeting. We're next week the steering committee meets, and then the week after we're hoping to pull together some of those initial focus groups, some specific groups that have to look at some specific spaces in the building. And we're pretty close to being able to put a date on the calendar for when community will be able to have some viewings. Obviously the board will be prior to that with some information we'll be able to share with you. I've also had the opportunity to meet with a couple neighbors that are really close to Lincoln individually, just to talk through concerns, questions, thoughts that they have. Obviously it's a neighborhood school. It's really close to some of our neighbors, and we want to make sure that we're working with them through this process. Concerns about where the building is, as well as just where construction is or what time it starts and all of that. So we're working together, and they know that I'll be reaching back out to them once we have something to share. So that it was an opportunity for them to share with me. Next time I'll be able to share more with them. Last slide, I think it's one more. Just our next step. So we're working on refining those Lincoln designs. Like I said, we're pretty close. And then setting that community open house date, which will be pretty early spring. Continue developing the Westbrook plans, and then we're working closely with the village. We have regular meetings with our architects and our construction management firm, but then also we've been staying in contact with the village as well, making sure that we're ready to get them what they need so that our timeline works and that our plans work with them. That is everything at this point. Questions, maybe?
Any questions? Pam, go ahead.
Who does the permits for the building? That's Nicholas, right?
Well, it'll go to the village if that's what you mean.
Right, yeah. It goes to building department, Bill Schroeder.
Right, it'll go to the village, but so the architects will work together with Nicholas to get everything to them.
Chris, go ahead.
Well, first of all, awesome job on this, Jason. I think the level of outreach you've done on this, I think, is incredible and really commendable, and I think serves as a good model for future districts that are going through this. So you may have some presentations on your hands, so who knows. But I guess my only question is, and I'm always just looking at the end date here, anything so far, and maybe this is hard to answer, that you think is putting that magical August 27 date at risk at this point?
No, I think everybody knows it's August 2027 that it needs to be done. So we are working as hard as possible to get everything done. And so that's why we're trying to just make sure that we have those timelines. As timelines need to shift, let's make sure that everybody knows that and it still works within our plans. But our goal is still to bring bids to the board for approval in September, meaning that we can start after that happens.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just thank you so much, Dr. Case, for all your work in shepherding this process and moving this forward. I had one question. So at a previous board meeting, I know you talked to neighbors surrounding Lincoln, and they expressed some of their concerns with maybe construction and noise and things like that. Just curious, are Westbrook neighbors bringing up those same concerns or other things as well?
Yeah, so we put out the survey to the neighbors as well, and we got, I forget how many responses. I'd have to check, but I think the same types of questions about just noise. I think what's hard is at this point right now we don't have a plan of like where are the trucks coming in, where are we going to unload, where are they parking, those types of things. The one specific I've seen a couple times now is making sure that bridge is that still going to be open so that a lot of parents I think walk over the bridge to get to Westbrook and pick up the students. So is that going to be open? And so, which we anticipate it will, but we're not, we'll have to double check and make sure it's obviously still going to be there at the end, and we want to make sure people have access to it, but it might be a long walk then around. They won't be able to pick up probably in the back. So, but no, it's a little different. Obviously we don't have, the neighbors right next door. The construction's going to be on in the back. So those neighbors that, are down that driveway, they probably won't see a lot. So it's a little different than Lincoln where we do have people right there, and we want to make sure we're cognizant of everybody, but definitely different at Westbrook. Sure.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, I appreciate your efforts at being a good neighbor and, making sure everybody's clued in and involved and informed as much as possible. I did have a couple things that I wanted to say. And Jason, I'm not sure that they're necessarily questions or comments for you in particular, but I had the privilege of touring those kindergarten buildings that many of the staff got to see. And in addition to, taking stock of all the different, tiny child-sized chairs and the different versions, there are so many different chairs. One of the things that it came to my attention as these other districts were talking about their experiences with implementing full-day kindergarten, it brought up something that I hadn't thought about, which is more, I guess, curriculum related, right? I mean, we're in a place as a district where we only offer a half day, and so the curriculum is the same morning and afternoon. If we were looking at a full day opportunity, well, it's not an opportunity, it's a mandate, but once we expand to full day instruction, that's a whole extra 4 hours worth of time that needs to be accounted for, where you won't just be repeating the same lessons from the morning or in the afternoon that you did in the morning. So I'm sure you all have thought about that already. And I was curious to know kind of what opportunities are we looking at to do that. And I guess relatedly, right, the piece about if we were to offer like an optional half day, right, to the extent that full day is not mandatory, parents would still have the option of saying, my child only seems ready for half day, I only want to send them half day. And then what do you do in terms of like the learning discrepancies that come from the difference from kids that are going full day?
Yeah, great questions. For our understanding of the law is that it's still required that we will be obligated to offer a full day program. So that absolutely will be something that we will have to keep in mind in the master schedule and the service delivery. And then also the internal design of the programming is something that will really start to take shape next year. And then that will also take a very similar structure to looking at, neighboring districts, trying to really make connections. I think a lot of that's already beginning to form in terms of planning because we're late adopters to full day. One of the advantages, to frame it positively, is that we have no shortage of other programs and districts to work with, to learn from what will be the customized experience for the Westbrook experience. And so, yeah, I know Dr. Vonderhaar will lead that work, but I think next year will be kind of the beginning stages of that because it'll have a 2-year kind of period to make sure that's done thoroughly.
And how does that line up then with where we are with construction? Because I think part of what we talked about at that tour was the experience of some of these districts kind of aligning the space to the type of teaching, right? And so if we're going to potentially change, or at least at the very least expand the curriculum, are we keeping that in mind as we're also planning the shape of the space?
Well, they being STR, have been very helpful in that, again, this is their expertise, this is what the type of clientele they work with. So they are very great at advising us on spaces that are as adaptable to the needs that happen, short of, if our group decides we need a full day stable experience or anything unique like that, that might throw us off a little bit. But, really when they're looking at square footage and they're looking at design, I think there's a lot of adaptability in terms of how we can make those spaces with our furniture, with our storage, with our, like, even just functionality of the rooms, to allow for a building that will be useful in the ever-changing approaches over the next, 75 years. Because we won't just be building for what's kind of what now is considered to be the best experience, but will be for many generations to come. So
Sure.
I think we don't have indication from our partnerships that the delay in the design should happen to, but it's a good question, because I think it's intuitive to think in a perfect world you'd have this customized experience built and then you design a space for it. But the reality is that us going in the reverse is not going to inhibit our ability to deliver a really customized, thoughtful design program. So.
Okay. I appreciate that. And then, Jason, I did want to ask in terms of the timeline, right? We obviously have a very hard deadline, but I know you've worked very quickly and efficiently to get us to this point in the process. If there was an opportunity to maybe break ground earlier than we expected, is that something we would be positioned to take advantage of?
I would say sure, but I don't see us being able to. We've already moved it up, I think, as much as we probably can.
Yeah.
We actually the original plan was to bring bid approvals in September for Lincoln, but then Westbrook would actually be later. We're now talking about doing them at the same time, just so we can see the whole picture at once. So we moved Westbrook up a little bit, but I think we have to finish our design, and then the architects and construction firm really need enough time for them to put everything together, all those specs, in order to go out to bid. So I can't anticipate. I'd be very surprised if we could go any quicker. And we also have to work around some, like we're working with the village, which is great, but there's also some exterior groups that we need to work with as well, like the Water Reclamation District that we don't have control over. Village really doesn't have, and I don't think, we just have to work on their timeline too. So I think our goal is to make sure that we have everything ready for those bids, that we don't need to be waiting on stuff while we're accepting bids. We don't want to do that. But we have talked about if we can do it in September, we should be able to break ground, and then possibly, depending on what the building's made of, it is possible to even work over the winter if you can get those footings in the ground before.
Okay. Yes, of course, not suggesting that we try to push those boundaries, right? We want to do it efficiently, but also at a high quality, right? So
Absolutely.
Not wanting to do it quickly for the sake of doing it quickly. But to the extent the stars align,
Sure.
and that becomes an option, that would certainly be.
Jason's got his hard hat ready.
I was going to say, there's nothing the district would slow down in that process, but really it's just about all the other groups being able to do what they need to do.
Yeah, and I guess to that end, my last question, with regard to like the permitting and all of that, specifically in terms of the village, I know sometimes it can happen that an ordinance is framed in a certain way such that an action that we might take in the course of construction is not in violation, but it becomes problematic for a different reason. Are those types of things that we're considering, right? Like if the parameters of our construction is sort of by the book, but practically it becomes a problem, say, for the neighbors or for, even for the village for some reason, are those things that we're trying to troubleshoot or at least be aware of?
Yeah, I would say we've already met with the village to try to be as proactive as possible. We've also met with the fire department, who gave us some ideas already, so that our architects are building in ideas like having a path that goes all the way around the building. You need to have for fire trucks to be able to have that access. So something like that's already in the process. But then we'll go through review cycles where they'll be able to give us back feedback, and then there's always changes that will need to be made. But we're trying our hardest to be as proactive as possible with that. That's why we've met with them multiple times just to say, what do you need from us? What do we need to make sure that this has? And then like I said, we're trying to work closely with the neighbors. It's going to be different. It's, there's no question as we're building, and it has to be next to a building that's existing, that we only have certain space we can put it. So that's why we want to work closely with the neighbors and make sure that we all understand what that process looks like and where it's going to be.
Okay, sounds good. Were there any other questions, Chris?
Apologies, I did have one more question. I know we don't even have a design yet, but one concern I have, obviously it's important that we stay on budget here. Have we looked at, or have you and Nicholas or STR had any discussions about possible tariff exposure for materials?
We've had some initial questions. I was talking to the architect even today about that. It's hard to anticipate. I think, from his standpoint, he was talking about the labor cost hopefully won't have that type of impact, whereas steel and something like that might. So it really just depends on kind of where that falls within our budget. What we do hope for is to get some more, to soon have that footprint done, the site plan done, and then we can get some better estimates from Nicholas. But it's something that we're thinking about and trying to make sure that we're anticipating as best as possible.
So this is a crazy idea, probably. But, we know we're going to need steel, right? We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we're going to need it. Have you and Nicholas had discussions about that? I'm not sure where Nicholas sources their materials from. Is it even conceivable to try to buy stuff, or have them buy stuff now in advance of us needing it? I don't know. Who knows where that's going to go? But we know what's already happened and what could happen in the future, and so.
Yeah, we haven't had that conversation yet. Okay. Most likely because we haven't determined exactly what the building will be made of yet. But I know there will be some steel. But they've talked about
no steel.
No, but they've talked about prefab and different options. I'm learning a lot as I'm not the construction person. But it's absolutely a conversation we can have. We've pre-purchased before things, and so it's not something that hasn't been done before. But I think you want to make sure it's something you're obviously going to use. And part of the bid process is there's alternatives sometimes. So you want to make sure that it's part of that base bid is what you're looking at. But I can have that conversation with them for sure.
Great.
I think otherwise that best playground ever might end up made of steel, right? If we have too much extra, we got to use it. We spent the money already. Okay.
The sturdiest playground.
Yes, sturdiest playground. Best and sturdiest. Did anybody else have anything to add? Okay. That brings us to our FOIA report.
Okay. In your board packet, you received a FOIA report. We had, I believe, 2 FOIAs that we responded to, and 4. 2? Okay, I'm sorry. No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. 4. 2. So more information can be found in the board packet, and that is all I have for that.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda. I understand, Corinne, you reviewed the bills this month. Everything was great? Wonderful. In that case, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Member Chung?
Yes.
Member Choke?
Yes.
Member Kwolchek?
Yes.
Member Leto?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice President Bennett Kill?
Yes.
President Fay?
Yes. That brings us to unfinished business, beginning with our Press Plus policies, which for some reason today is extra hard to say. We reviewed the updates to the policy manual last month. I think we mentioned there weren't any substantive changes, updates to citations, et cetera, nothing too earth-shattering. So if there are no questions or concerns, I will entertain a motion to approve the Press Plus policies, issue 117.
So moved.
Second. Member Choke?
Yes.
Member Kwolchek?
Yes.
Member Leto?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice President Bennett Kill?
Yes.
Member Chung?
Yes.
President Fay?
Yes. And then we have Vision 2030 resolution. This is a resolution put together by the Illinois Association of School Boards. We reviewed this at our meeting last month, and now it's our opportunity to approve it or not. Did anybody have anything they wanted to share about it? I know we talked about it last month. Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve Vision 2030 resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Member Qualcheck?
Yes.
Member Leto?
No.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice President Bennett Kill?
Yes.
Member Chung?
Yes.
Member Choke?
Yes.
President Fay?
No. Okay, and that takes us to Jess Kolka Terman Strategic Communications Contract. Again, this is something we talked about at our last meeting. Were there any other questions or comments about that? Eileen, did you have a question? You're just waiting to vote. Okay. Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion to approve this contract.
Pam makes motion.
Second? Okay. You can take it.
Second.
Member Leto?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice President Bennett Kill?
Yes.
Member Chung?
Yes.
Member Choke?
Yes.
Member Qualcheck?
Yes.
President Fay?
Yes. We have another opportunity for community comments, which it appears no one is interested in, so we'll move on quickly. Heather, would you like to say something? No, she's good. Okay, we are now at new business, reviewing the board meeting dates for the 2025-26 school year. So you have the proposed calendar for our board meetings in front of you. This is just a first read. We will take action on it next month, but if you notice any glaring conflicts or concerns about the dates of our meetings, please feel free to address those with Roberta. We'll put that on you. Any comments or questions about that at this time? Okay. Then we have a resolution regarding the Cook County Paid Leave Ordinance. So some of you might remember this was something we discussed or sort of have been talking about for several months. Mary, did you maybe want to give an update about that?
This is, as James Petrangaro refers to as our belt and suspenders approach, which is just taking formal action as a school board to formally articulate that although we are presumably covered by the village's ordinance exempting employers within the village, school districts included, from this applicable Cook County ordinance, which we are in favor of and benefit from, as well as we do not see any negative impact for our staff, given the fact that we have effective contractual bargaining agreements and ample vacation time built into our school year calendar. All that to say, this resolution really just provides the school district with the formal statement of authority and accepting and agreeing with the position that, for all of the reasons described, benefits the district and we don't believe harms anyone.
Are there any questions about that? Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice President Bennett Kill?
Yes.
Member Chung?
Yes.
Member Choke?
Yes.
Member Qualcheck?
Yes.
Member Leto?
Yes.
President Fay?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our communications, starting with our NSSEO report.
Yes, quick one. So we met on Wednesday, February 12th. It was supposed to be the 5th, but we moved the meeting due to the sort of inclement weather on the 5th. That turned out not to be that bad. But a couple of things. So extended school year. Typically, NSSEO has a much longer extended school year than most districts. They have very high participation in ESY, much higher than we do. I think they're about 95%. So most of their kids, avail themselves of this. They typically do 90 hours of instruction, but due to the Kirk HVAC project that you all have heard about and approved, thank you for that, that construction needs to happen pretty early on in the summer for it to be available for the kids to come back in August. And so the proposal has been to reduce ESY this year to 60 hours. And the board approved that at the meeting. One of the benefits that we think might come of this is I know that there's been issues over the last few years with teachers and staff not wanting to teach ESY. Just because of, they're already burned out from a long year and then 90 hours is a lot. And so the hope is that we might actually get more teachers and staff participating this year. So it'll be an interesting kind of trial balloon, and then, seeing how student outcomes are affected next school year will be interesting data. We also formally approved the pillars of the strategic plan, which I mentioned to all of you last month. And again, thank you for allowing me to vote in the affirmative on this. And just to remind you all, those pillars are curriculum and instruction, finance and facilities, governance, and highly qualified staff. So now the work will begin on the specific goals and metrics and targets around all those. And our next meeting is Wednesday, March 5th, weather permitting, of course.
Ed Foundation. We had a meeting on January 28th. The big things that came out of that is a big thank you to those who donated through the NFC AFC Squares and then the Dave & Buster's fundraiser. The gala is April 5th, which I've mentioned before, at Old Orchard Country Club from 6 to 11. The theme is Vintage Vegas, and tickets are now on sale if you have not seen them yet. And our next meeting is Tuesday, February 25th at 6:30 at Westbrook.
Wonderful. PTO reports. Let's start with Westbrook.
Westbrook was on February 11th, and the biggest takeoff that I wanted to share was that Principal Marty spoke about sweet celebrations and the change from doing special lunches to sweet celebrations. Marty shared the reasons why the change was made, and it was just so heartful and good. Special lunches were not for everyone. Not everyone could participate, afford them, maybe for other reasons too. And so the little ones who didn't get special lunches felt really ostracized and really sad. The sweet celebrations is something that everyone can participate in, parent to approval. No one feels left out. No one feels that they're alone. And it's also been enlarged to include movies and activities. And Principal Marty shared that he dressed up as Olaf in one of them.
Why do we have pictures?
I know. I think there was a picture, but of course you wouldn't recognize him because he was fully dressed. Yes. And he talked about how important it is to include everybody, especially when they're young and they don't have the ability to not feel badly about it. My thought was that even when they're in Lyons or Fairview, they still would feel sad about not getting special lunches. I know that was something that we talked about last year in the PTO, and I know that Laura DeGroot was very adamant about making a positive change so that teachers didn't have to console sad children. Marty touched on quite a lot of the ramifications of a student seeing other people getting special lunches and they did not have it. And so it was just like, oh my gosh, if I won the lottery, I would just make a contribution and everybody could have it. So that was the big takeoff, and they're planning they were talking about Valentine's Day and what they would do then, and the rest of the year, the programming and stuff for the rest of the year. So that was nice.
Sounds good. Thank you. Lions Park?
The last PTO meeting for Lions Park was Monday, March 3rd. Nope.
The last
Hold
one
on.
is in the future.
February 3rd. Sorry. What day is it? Same day of the week. I know. There we go. The vast majority of the conversation was talking about the upcoming Palooza, which is the big variety show that it comes every year, and that'll be in the beginning of March. And then they have a family trivia night coming up on the 28th, which is a Friday, which is our second year doing that. It's pretty fun. And the next board meeting will be Monday, March 3rd at 7 p.m. in the Lions Park staff office.
Wonderful. Fairview?
Hey there. All right. We had our last meeting on Monday, February 10th. The science fair was yesterday. They have Fairview Cares. They did the Valentine's cards and they sent them to Lurie's. It was like over 100, I believe it was like 177 cards that they sent out. Next thing that they're looking at is Earth Day and whether or not they're going to plant something or clean something up. They had their fundraiser and they made over $20,000. They kind of ended the week with a volleyball game between the staff. So they said it was a lot of fun. The kids really enjoyed watching it. And then on February 27th, we have our Fairview Follies. And our next meeting is Monday, March 10th, 6 o'clock, Fairview LRC.
Wonderful. Well, I had the privilege of attending the Lincoln PTO meeting in Vicky's stead. I know you were deeply missed. They were like, "Why are you here? And where is Vicky? Because we like her better." No, that's okay. But I will say, there was a lot of sort of end of the year planning going on, which you would think at that point we were in January, right? But we're already thinking ahead to some of the big events, and especially with eighth graders in mind, all of the celebrations and the different sort of treats and things, the eighth grade picnic, the eighth grade party, not a dance, a party. But one of the big takeaways from that meeting, when I was there, I took the opportunity to say, look, this is a venue. Our board meetings are a venue for you to get your word out to people. So what is it that you feel is most important for me to share? And the biggest thing was sort of drumming up interest for the executive board roles. The parents that lead the Lincoln PTO currently have been leaders of PTOs for Lions and Fairview and Westbrook all the way down. A lot of dedicated service put in, but no doubt a little bit of burnout and, maybe some idea fatigue. So it would be really great to have some new interest, some new excitement in terms of that leadership. And so I was asked to put that out to everyone to please consider volunteering for a leadership role on certainly not just the Lincoln PTO, although that's who I'm speaking for, but for all of our PTOs. Okay, and with that, we arrive at our board president report. Speaking of important dates, March 6th, you all will not have to be here. We will be canceling our tentative meeting that was scheduled for that day. But please add to your calendar a meeting on March 13th at 6 p.m. Hopefully everyone can be available. That's when we will be doing our superintendent evaluation. And I'll reach out to you all prior to that about submitting feedback. But the 13th will be the meeting that we'll have where we will compile the individual data and finalize the evaluation. And then May 1st will be our board reorganization meeting. So as many of you know, there's an election April 1st. Again, those dates align too, where we expect to be swearing in board members. We expect that another round of board members will be elected in the April election, right? So May 1st will be the date when those people who are elected will be seated. So please keep that in mind. I think that's going to be a special meeting that's a little bit off the cycle that we typically have. Are there any questions about that?
March 13th is at 6, and that's not a typo? Not 7? Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure that was right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Just to give us enough time to process. And certainly if we get done at 7, then great. Then you can go home. Okay. And we do not have anything currently scheduled for board discussion. I regret to inform you all that we will have need for closed session. Thank you. I was just about to look for that. And so we will have need for a closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body. I'm not sure I actually have to read this whole thing, but I will. Just the beginning. Okay, great. For employment, disciplinary, staff purposes. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to enter, no, we have to adjourn the open session. Enter closed session. Motion to enter closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Vice President Bennett Kill? Yes. Member Chung?
Yes.
Member Choke?
Yes.
Member Qualcheck?
Yes.
Member Leto?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
President Fay?
Yes.